G'day everyone. G'day to this live on behalf of Infected Blood Australia and myself, Charles Mackenzie. Let me just get my camera ready here. Tonight, it's the end of the world for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation as we know it. They simply cannot continue in the vein that they have been going these recent decades. I will say good day to everybody and thank you for turning up. It's a very, very special event tonight. We dubbed it the end of the world for the ABC. Why would we say such a thing? Well, we say such a thing because tonight, if you stick with us for the duration, for this hour, and I can tell you something, if you want to see some very raw viewing and you want to hear the biggest scandal in our nation's history, in Australia's history, what is said tonight, what's coming tonight, I predict will likely be used to bring about the end of me or the end of the ABC. G'day, Thick Muscle, good to see you. G'day everybody, so glad you can join us for what I again called the end of the ABC or the end of the world. Now, just to let you know, I can't do this on camera, I don't want to, but I'm quite ill at the moment. Our group, as many of you might know, is actually about 4 victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal, contaminated blood transfusions and blood products that were distributed before the 2000s. In the 1980s, people acquired HIV through the blood supply, through blood transfusions and blood products. And also before the 2000s, we also had, for many decades, we had tens of thousands of Australians infected with the deadly virus Hepatitis C, okay, from blood transfusions and blood products. Australia doesn't know about this. It's our deadliest medical scandal. It's never been investigated by the ABC. How can tens of thousands of infections through the blood supply, through blood transfusions, through blood products, how could that not be investigated? Okay? So, we've called tonight, it's the end for the ABC as they know it. I'm the president of Infected Blood Australia. To get on tonight, I had an accident just before coming on tonight. And what's happened is our group are very ill, okay? In some ways, we're about a bluff, okay? And the bluff is that it takes me ages to get ready to make these videos, okay? And when I say get ready, I mean my muscles are failing. And I've been a tainted blood victim since a kid. So this only really started to become quite aggressive in I think about the last year. There's been signs of it for many years, but I didn't really know what was happening. So just before coming on tonight, doing this, which I have to do, thank you for being here. Stick with me for this hour because I say this is the biggest scandal, the biggest medical scandal in Australian history, and the reason why you never heard about it, I'm going to reveal it tonight. Okay, and it's the end of the ABC, I think. And so we've got people in our group who are fighting cancer. We've got people with the bleeding disorder Haemophilia, and these people required these treatments. And one of these treatments was called Factor 8. And that was made by the Australian Red Cross and by the jab and blood products maker CSL. And in the 1980s, 1,400, because of contamination of their products, because of that, 1,400 haemophiliacs lost their lives in Australia. And we've never had a legal inquiry, and the ABC's never investigated. In addition, tens of thousands of Australians have developed the deadly virus Hepatitis C as a result of blood transfusions. Again, it's never been investigated by a legal inquiry as it should be, and it's never been investigated by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. So, today we tried to tag the chief medical reporter of the ABC. Now, you just bear with me as I do this evening. I'll be looking down at my iPad, and I hope you could bear with me as I say. I really appreciate you being here because this evidence is the most important evidence I've delivered. I waited really for this tonight. I didn't plan this. It's happened because of events that have happened today, okay? So you're going to really get to know me. If you didn't know me before, you'll really get to know me a bit better tonight, I'll tell you that much. You'll get to know what I've been up to. I'm going to tell you what I've been up to for 30 years. And I think for those of you who are feeling a bit blue about lockdown and a bit blue about how, in my opinion, Australians are being mistreated compared to the rest of the world, okay, during this pandemic. I feel very mistreated. I don't know how you feel, but I sure as hell do. I've not been able to see my family. I've not been able to see my stepfather, who's dying of motor neuron disease. And I take exception to that. I know more about viruses than any of the public health establishment in Australia, okay? So, the chief medical reporter of the ABC is Sophie Scott. And what's happened is our group, which is made up of people who are contaminated blood victims, okay, one of our great members, Sue, a good friend, has written to the ABC many times and actually had them reply. And the head of news and investigations, Gavin Morris, was replying to Sue about why it was the ABC had never investigated, despite some of these, many of these infections, of course, happening in the 80s, the 70s, and some in the 90s, 20 years ago. Why is it that they haven't investigated? And Gavin Morris and this Sophie Scott were emailing Sue, and basically it came to a head where they said that based on the merits that they had looked at it, and on that basis, it didn't warrant an investigation. That was the decision of Sophie Scott and Gavin Morris. So we thought that was outrageous because just a week ago, the ABC's European correspondent, whose name escapes me for the moment, bear with me, as I say, we'll get there, Samantha Hawley published for the first time something that I was called a liar for saying for decades, was that Australia had sent contaminated blood products. The Commonwealth Serum Laboratories had sent contaminated blood throughout the region and infected potentially tens of thousands of people, okay? This is Australia's worst, this is probably the globe's biggest medical scandal, or one of, but it's certainly Australia's deadliest medical scandal, and yet the ABC won't investigate. So today, of course, we wanted to say to Sophie, come on, and there you have it. This is after our victims, people with cancer, people who've lost fantastic professions, who have great value to the community, and we're blocked as a group by this medical reporter. Well, I'll just say this to you now. As you may or may not know, I've been fighting Australia's deadliest medical scandal for 30 years. It has involved court action. I've been involved in that. I've been involved in research. I've forced 2 pathetic, corrupted inquiries. If you can call them inquiries, they weren't legal inquiries. One government one, one Senate one. And you wait for it. We're about to break the Senate for corruption. We've got them. And what's happened is, I've known that Australia's public health establishment are corrupt. And I've known for decades. They are covering up our deadliest medical scandal. So when this pandemic happened, I knew what would happen. And in fact, 20 years ago, I was warning about the rise of the medical tyrants, okay? We've got video of me arguing with them. If we've got time, I'll show you tonight. I knew it was happening. They basically use viruses for their own ends, okay? For their own budgets. It's all about budgets. It's all about money, okay? So, they don't want you to know about Australia's deadliest medical scandal. Why? Because they covered it up and they don't want it coming out of their budgets. And they don't want to go to jail. So, today, I've known about the corruption in public health in Australia for decades. This is why I've held on. And frustratingly, right, my health has started to change now, okay? And that is frustrating because, because we've got much work to do. And these are bad actors, bad characters, okay? So, my gut instinct has always been very strong. And today, I went looking for the compromise of this Sophie Scott, this medical reporter. How on earth, when she knows that thousands of people are suffering, tens of thousands are suffering, how on earth would this reporter who's paid by us, the Australian taxpayer, how on earth would she make the decision not to investigate? That's just bizarre. Here we are. That's her there. So let's have a look at what Sophie Scott says about herself, okay? I'm an award-winning Australian medical reporter working on ABC TV News. My mission is to bring evidence-based information on health, psychology, and happiness to audience around the world. Okay, my books are Live a longer life, and road testing happiness. I'm part of the specialist reporting team at ABC where I focus on medical research, investigations into patient safety, and original journalism. Okay, stories my team have done have led to improvements of patients in many areas, including cosmetic surgery, genetic testing, and women's health. Okay, all noble things. Right, so why would this reporter, Sophie Scott at the ABC, not listen to victims? They're begging her, please, would you investigate? No one's investigated for decades, right? So, my gut instinct, she says that she likes medical research. Okay. Well, at the heart of the contaminated blood scandal is the corruption of these medical research organisations. The corrupt Kirby Institute of New South Wales and the corrupt Burnet Institute of Victoria. Now, it's a big thing to say these organisations are corrupt, but they are corrupt. Okay? My name's Charles Mackenzie, and I mean everything that I say. And the other group are the Hepatitis Australia corrupt and Hepatitis New South Wales are corrupt, okay? This is part of the public health establishment that is stopping you from knowing about Australia's deadliest medical scandal, Hepatitis C, contaminated blood transfusions and blood products. So, Sophie Scott and Gavin Morris have told our group, this is the director of news and investigations at the ABC, have told our group that on merit, they will not investigate. Now, public broadcasters in Canada investigated the tainted blood scandal 25 years ago. Public broadcasters in Ireland investigated their contaminated blood scandal 20 years ago. It led to a massive legal inquiry. And public broadcasters, the BBC, have investigated their infected blood scandal, and it's in part helped inspire this biggest ever legal investigation. The exact same thing happened in Australia. Thousands of victims. I'm part of that inquiry. I had to go overseas to get away from the corrupt public health establishment. That's why I've been saying to them, God help us, right? So, just bear with me one moment while I get this evidence for you. I can't believe it myself. I cannot believe this. I found it this afternoon. It nearly gave me a bloody stroke. Okay? I've had to take a heart tablet to come on. Thank you. I've had to take a heart tablet to come on tonight. I've lost so many friends. I lost this wonderful, funny man, this person I love, Jay Franklin. I lost Jay in 2017. There he is. He couldn't get the help he needed. He could have lived longer, but he couldn't get the help he needed. So he just stopped. I had last conversations with him. Couldn't get help he needed. He died in 2017, late 2017. So, what else happened in 2017? Well, the Kirby Institute here in New South Wales, Bill Gates, by the way, gave them 16 million not so long ago. The Kirby Institute, some sort of experts on viruses, they had a function. And this function was basically, I'll read it for you, okay? You ready? It goes like this. On Thursday, 27 July, the Kirby Institute held a special World Hepatitis Day event which brought together key stakeholders and community members in New South Wales to celebrate Australia's significant achievements in hepatitis C treatment. Ms. Sophie Scott, ABC, led the panel. She led the panel. Ms. Sophie Scott led the panel, okay, for the Kirby Institute. Did you indeed, Ms. Sophie Scott? Well, we wrote to the Kirby Institute years ago asking them how many people were infected by contaminated blood. No reply. Then Sue, one of our members, wrote to the Burnet Institute in Victoria. How many people, you're experts on hepatitis C, how many people are infected in Victoria with hepatitis C from contaminated blood? No reply. No reply? These receive public monies, these groups. Okay, so bear with me. So here she is at this World Hepatitis Day 2017 with the Kirby Institute, who've got questions to answer in the cover-up of Australia's deadliest medical scandal, contaminated blood, who refuse to answer questions. Here is Sophie Scott. Okay, there she is. Right, chairing. You know, not chairing, sorry. What was it? Let's get this right for legal reasons. She led the panel. She led the panel. And on that panel were a whole bunch of the public health establishment. Okay? So they're all there. So all of the people that are connected to the cover-up, the reason why no one in Australia knows about our deadliest medical scandal. Do you know, I've been a witness at this inquiry overseas, and I've been humiliated. They get their contaminated blood scandals on the BBC almost weekly at sometimes. Obviously not during the pandemic, which was a pity, because that was the more severe issue, contaminated blood, okay? More people died, far more deadly. No comparison. No comparison. The reason we've been locked down all these years, 2 years, it's got no comparison. Hep C is hundreds of times more deadly than this thing that caused the pandemic, right? And we've got no help. We get no media. There's no mainstream media at all. And all these other countries solved their contaminated blood scandals years ago, investigated. They've all been on TV. But here, Sophie Scott says the story has no merit, basically. Her and Gavin Morris won't do anything. So, at this World Hepatitis Day meeting, what do we see? This man. This man. This man. Stuart Loveday. Stuart Loveday is the number one reason why you don't know about Australia's deadliest medical scandal, contaminated blood. Okay? He basically white-anted our group, and he is guilty of the worst discrimination I've ever seen in my life. Now, there are members of our group watching tonight, and I'm telling you now, it was a big effort for me to get on here tonight because I'm not very well, right? This man, he utterly ruined us, our group, 20 years ago. He utterly ruined us. What he did was he was the Australian government's funded head of Hepatitis C in Australia. He came from England. He arrived here, I think it was 1993, something like that, 94, somewhere in the 90s. And he started what was called Hepatitis Australia and Hepatitis New South Wales. This man, Stuart Loveday. Now, we used to have meetings, and at one of the meetings, he turned up, and he chastised people at the meeting because he'd heard the media refer to them as innocent victims. These are people whose children had been infected with contaminated blood products, who had Hep C. Some in the audience had HIV and Hep C. And he came and he said that they should not use this innocent. These people should not refer to themselves as innocent victims. And he used to attack us relentlessly when people said they were innocent. Now, we couldn't figure out what the bloody hell is this man doing, right? Well, he's had millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, okay? This public health establishment, you're talking about millions. Now, listen. 1,400 haemophiliacs were killed. They lost their lives. No investigation. And this guy, you know what he does? He comes to our meeting, okay? And you can go to infectedbloodaustralia.com, go to the evidence there. You'll see a thing called, I think, an Alliance of Bias timeline. And it's basically the Bible on how we never got help, okay? So this guy comes to our meeting, and there's video as well, you can see. We've got video of him. He comes to our meeting, and he says this, because they're saying to him, will you know, the UK, the British victims of contaminated blood, and there's tens of thousands, the victims actually were given financial assistance, which was significant to help do things like pay the mortgage, right? Because they can't work, many of them, right? Their lives are ruined. They've got family. It's shocking. But we wanted the same. We tried to get the same. And we asked him, would you help us? Would you help us? Because all the other government hepatitis people around the world, the government funded, helped their contaminated blood victims. And we said, would you help us? And he said, well, no. He said, no, we won't. But he gave this commitment. He said, you can try and get your own inquiry. And he said this. We fully respect the right of this group to do that, but because of the negligent nature or the alleged negligent nature, which may or may not be the case, it probably is the case, I don't know, because it's such a complex issue, we see it as something that we can't judge on. We would support the individuals within it. We would support groups within it, as we have done already, but we would see it as a legal issue, right? So there he is, Stuart Loveday, giving his reasoning as to why he won't get involved for helping contaminated blood victims, okay? It's a legal issue, but he'd do nothing to get in our way if we tried to get an inquiry ourselves. Now, he said this in 2002. He got millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money, and that millions and millions was given for this reason, to represent the best interests of all people with hepatitis. And so he should. There should be education. We should have everything that's possible, but we should also be telling people that, did you know that thousands of people were infected with Hep C from contaminated blood? And those people need help. Haemophiliacs, for instance, survivors of those haemophilia treatments, many of which didn't even need these treatments, okay, to survive, and their lives are ruined. They needed help. They needed some form of financial assistance. So for the next 2 years, we campaigned, and I campaigned my backside off, 16-hour days. Everyone else in the group was sick back then, most other people, because the drugs to treat the HIV and the Hep C were very, very hardcore, right? They were like chemo, man. For many people, it was terrible. It was terrible. So I wasn't really, really well, but I was better, healthier than the others at that time. So I worked my guts out, and we did the unthinkable. We got a Senate inquiry into hepatitis C and the blood supply, right? 2004. So we fought long and hard. Great victims. We fought hard. We get in there, right? Michael Pollack, this is a witness, a contaminated blood victim when he was a minor, okay? This guy, he was in the Navy. While in the Navy, he has this accident, right? And he loses a leg. And so he is given blood in 1983 or so, and that blood helps him survive. So, being a bloody good bloke, right, a really good man, he decides in 1990, you know what, he's at work, he thinks, I think I should give something back, because I had my life saved. And he goes to donate blood at the Red Cross. And guess what they say to him? They say, guess what? Your blood has come up positive for Hep C. So he said, come in and have a chat. So he goes in there, he's like, blimey, he's just got a young family, if I recall correctly. And he's obviously extremely upset, very worried, right? Very concerned for his family. Crikey! This is a huge thing. And they say, oh, well, would you keep on donating, please? He's like, what? And they said, well, it is a serious condition, but would you mind still donating? We'll use it. And we'll use it to make products for people with haemophilia. Okay? People with haemophilia. Guess what? Every single haemophiliac at that time became infected with hepatitis C from their blood products. And they were asking this guy to donate they were asking to obtain a blood victim who just found out they'd given him Hep C. This is the Red Cross, asking to donate so they can make it for blood products for haemophiliacs. Is it any wonder that 1,400 haemophiliacs were killed? Many of them friends of mine and people in this group. Okay? So, we get this Senate inquiry in 2004, and what do you know? The man who said that he would not get in our way, that man who came to our meetings, who refused to help us, the man who said he would not get in our way, guess what happened? He turns up at our Senate inquiry, okay? The original chair of the Senate inquiry was a guy called Steve Hutchins, and before the public hearings start, incredibly, this Steve Hutchins is replaced, okay? Like that. And in comes this Senator Jan McLucas, and suddenly, this man, Stuart Loveday, from England, the head of Hepatitis Australia, the guy who founded it, and the head of Hepatitis New South Wales, who said he'd never do anything to get in our way, who wouldn't help us. He had millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to represent people with hepatitis. He didn't share a cent with haemophiliacs. He didn't share a cent. turns up at their inquiry and gives evidence to say that helping haemophiliacs would be discriminatory. Haemophiliacs have been helped all around the world. No one said, of course they didn't. These people were knowingly infected. Everyone knows that. CSL did it. They made billions of dollars. They use these people in often cases as guinea pigs. Okay, it's the most terrible crime. Right now, the Infected Blood Inquiry in the UK is hearing the scandal. They know it is. It's a terrible crime. And this man, they know that children were knowingly infected, okay? In the UK, it's all coming out. They know that it happened here. Investigators know that it happened here. And this man from England, called Stuart Loveday, who suddenly came out here to start these government-funded hepatitis groups, he says it's discrimination. It's discrimination to help haemophiliacs. So we fought so hard for that inquiry. And when we're there, we're going, my God, the very agency that the taxpayer funds, right, to basically support us has turned on us. I've got this guy going for me. And he's basically at the inquiry, he's saying, you know, Muggins here, he concocted a whole bunch of bullshit and made us out that we were discriminatory. His lie was that we were discriminating against people that shared needles. We never ever did that, not even once. You liar. You liar, Stuart Loveday. You deliberately concocted that, Stuart Loveday. You did that to destroy haemophiliacs, mate. You did. And you killed people. Your little ruse worked, mate. You did real good. You killed a mate of mine. You killed Craig. You killed our group. I'm sorry, that was a bit loud. My apologies. My apologies. The public health establishment in Australia destroyed infected blood victims. The very groups that were funded to help us, that were legally duty-bound, that collected the money to support us, were the very groups that they used to destroy us. Okay? And good men died after that inquiry. We had every expectation, every other inquiry in the world had helped their haemophiliacs. I led that group to failure. Okay? I promised them. Do you understand? This man, remember his face. Please remember him. Please, Stuart Loveday. He's in Australia, he lives in New South Wales, and he's the man. Okay? Well, at this ABC reporter, there she is. There she is. World Hepatitis Day. There's Stuart Loveday there. There's Sophie Scott. Looking like quite friendly, aren't they? Nothing to be ashamed of normally, except in the background, together we are strong, it says, all the innovate, all these slogans. And here they are for World Hepatitis Day. Discover, empower, right? There's Sophie Scott in the panel. There she is, right? Okay, well, do you think if you're discovering, empowering, do you think that would be to make sure that Australia doesn't know about its deadliest medical scandal? Do you think that's empowering for Australia? Do you think Australia should have to pay tens of millions of dollars to this hepatitis groups to make sure that you don't know about our deadliest medical scandal? This man, Stuart Loveday, and there he is there, and Hepatitis Australia, they criminally discriminated against haemophiliacs in our country. Did you know that haemophiliacs, friends of mine, fought Canada's tainted blood scandal? My mate James Krepner, a wonderful hero, a mentor to me, and a good man. He used to help me in the 90s when I was fighting these people. Anyway, he was successful. We lost James in 2009, unfortunately, but Canada had a big victory through him. And Canada, you had a hero in James Krepner. Then we had the Irish, and they forced their commission of inquiry that led largely by 1,000 women who've been infected with hepatitis C. These are women who were infected by the blood product, the product anti-D, which is given to, I think, to rhesus negative women. If I remember correctly, I'll probably got that wrong, but it was a treatment or something given to women, this anti-D, okay? 1,000 women were infected with Hep C, okay? That was in Ireland. And we used to be friendly with their group, Positive Action, okay? And now in the UK, they had financial assistance for their victims, their haemophiliacs. Everybody knows it was no accident. Everybody knows that. We're friends with them in the UK. They're friends with our people here. But they got helped, and rightly so. The families still need help, but their victims got financial assistance. Not enough. Haven't had justice yet, but they got financial assistance so they wouldn't lose homes. But our haemophiliacs got none. And our haemophiliacs, we went to that Senate inquiry because we're able to get some blood transfusion victims. I was able to get some of them, settle court cases for people who were infected between 1985 and 1990. It's a weird thing about that temporal window between 85 and 1990. That the Red Cross didn't use available testing for non-A, non-B, Hep C as they call it, back then. And so when we went to that Senate inquiry, the absolute hope, this is why I lobbied for it, the absolute dream was that we could not have a situation where haemophiliacs were left out. We just could not have that. We could not have a situation where women who'd been infected with Hep C during childbirth were left without home help and various things like that. And for people with liver cancer, we just could not have a situation. We had people on very toxic treatments. The treatments for Hep C back then were devastating. And so we needed to get help big time, home help, nursing, money to go to hospital to and fro, that sort of thing. Okay. Well, incredibly, the Senate of Australia and that inquiry was the only inquiry in the world that found against that man there, Stuart Loveday. He basically went to the inquiry and he said, no, under no circumstances. We were betrayed very, very badly after breaking his promise to us, after saying he'd never ever do anything for us, even though he's being paid millions and millions of dollars by a taxpayer, and every other government-funded hepatitis group around the world spoke up for tainted blood victims. He said no, he would do nothing. But then when we eventually fought the inquiry, when I got the inquiry that I basically gave everything to, he turned up to accuse me basically and slander me. It's all through here. He basically, after he makes a submission to the Senate inquiry, he doesn't meet the terms of reference, okay? But, it's just allowed to, much to the delight of the Australian Red Cross, CSL, and Jan McLucas at the Senate inquiry and all the other people who are party to this criminal cover-up, okay? You're all going to jail. The Kirby Institute, you're gone. Do you understand? Done. 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 Done, damn you. Good people have died because of you guys. What, your public health establishment are guilty of the biggest public health cover-up in Australian history. If I'm wrong, Kirby Institute, please give us the figures. We wrote to you in good faith, and you ignored us. Sue, who's watching tonight, wrote to the Burnett Institute. Again, ignored. Why? Because you're part of the cover-up. And yet the Burnett Institute has had $200 million to give advice to the Victorian government to lock down the whole of Victoria, okay? And to give mandated jabs, right? Okay. And they're covering up Australia's deadliest medical scandal. Nice, real nice. So billions and billions and billions of dollars has been lost from the Victorian economy and the New South Wales economy, and the great public health experts that we had presiding over that fiasco are also responsible for the criminal cover-up of Australia's deadliest medical scandal. Do you know, after Stuart Loveday had made his first submission, he must have found out what the result of the inquiry was going to be, because he actually made a submission that was allowed. No one else made a late one as late as him. It was like days before the thing was finished. And that late submission was all about how Charles Mackenzie had said dishonest things under evidence. And I'd made out his group to be representative only of people who got Hep C through other means, such as, tattooing or, dirty needles or whatever, right? And he's basically making me out that I'm this unfeeling, horrible man. No, I'm not. I had a virus. He did not. His whole role was to destroy us at that inquiry, okay? And it worked. And so as a result, contaminated blood victims, their deaths were hastened, okay? Because they could not get the services that they needed. And this man, Stuart Loveday, his name is infamous throughout Australia's haemophilia community, okay, throughout those survivors. Bloody infamous he is. Absolutely infamous. You only have to go to the Senate and look at the 2004 inquiry into hepatitis C and the Australian blood supply. Discrimination. Every other contaminated blood victim, children, were knowingly infected. They were helped in Canada, Ireland, the UK, but here in Australia, it's discrimination. Yeah? And he made millions and millions and millions of dollars. His organisation was funded to the tunes of millions and millions of dollars to give that advice. A bit like the Burnett Institute. They get millions and millions of dollars to shut people's lives down. Maybe that was efficacious. I guess time will tell. But what he did, time has told us, what he did was pure murder. People's deaths were hastened while he made fortunes. Now, Stuart Loveday and his backers might now try and take legal action against me so that they can make out that Australia's got quite strong defamation laws, right? So these corrupt public health officials, what they do, and he is corrupt. This man, he needs to be criminally investigated, okay? It's just that simple. It's really simple. And by the way, to the infected blood inquiry in the United Kingdom, it's taken too long. I've given evidence to you. We've got people down here with cancer. They're desperate. Absolutely desperate. Desperate. Okay? Haemophiliacs dying right now without help. We get British people telling us what to do, what not to do. But we don't get British people putting their hand up for us and putting their hand up for victims, haemophiliacs and infected blood victims here in Australia. We don't get any help, okay? And I made a statement to you in good faith to that infected blood inquiry, okay, about the desperation of people down here who I talk to every day. I've got to talk every day. I've had to pick up that phone. I've had to speak to people, okay? Dying people, okay? Do you know how many people I've known who've died? I've got English people telling me, oh, you know, they're blocking me. They're blocking our campaign because they think we're anti-vaxxers. No, we're not anti-vaxxers, thank you very much. We're anti-corruption, okay? This public health establishment cannot be trusted. They've locked us down. They've got mandatory this and that. But what about them? What about their performance? Here we have it, the Kirby Institute. World Hepatitis Day 2017. Sophie Scott's there. Sophie Scott refuses to investigate, okay, Australia's deadliest medical scandal. And here she is at the centre of a panel from a Kirby Institute who refused to give the statistics, the numbers, the actual figures. They work with the Australian Red Cross, okay? The Australian Red Cross use them to do modelling on tainted blood. So we've written to them asking, and it's just evade, 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 okay? And here he is, Stuart Loveday. He's also connected with them. He is the spoiler. He is the guy that says, don't help Australians. There was a global infected blood scandal, right? Before the 2000s, everyone else gets helped, but not us in Australia. And what's my point? My point is, Australians are mistreated. The public health establishment, what you've seen in this last 2 years is, you know, they make mistakes, right? I'm not saying that this is not a real virus that's held us. I'm saying it's hundreds of times less deadly than hepatitis C. And hepatitis C infected tens of thousands of Australians. There are people out there right now that don't know they were infected because of a blood transfusion or blood product that was given before the 2000s. They know that. This man, Stuart Loveday, in the late 90s, he had millions of dollars. He blocked a Australia-wide public campaign on TV featuring tainted blood victims, right? He blocked that. He blocked that. Okay? Every step of the way, Sophie Scott has been asked by dying people this year, would she investigate for them? She blocked that. She blocked that. And she blocked us. And she blocked our campaign today. Okay? Australia's public health establishment, we get blocked. And yet we're very legitimate. We have dying people. You've seen them on Infected Blood Australia. If you haven't, looked through this page on Instagram. Where did the money go? I'm asked. Well, guess what? Very good point. Where does all this money go, taxpayer money go? To the Kirby Institute, to the Burnett Institute in Melbourne. They give advice that locks us down. Is that fair? They give advice that mandates jabs. Is that fair? I'm not saying it isn't. What I'm saying is this. Do you trust them? I don't trust them. I am saying that. And I'm saying this to the ABC. You know, public broadcasters did the right thing by victims of their deadliest medical scandals, albeit belatedly. And that is something I'm going to be sensitive here and careful not to upset victims overseas, right? But yeah, perhaps the UK, they weren't quick enough. But ultimately they got there. But the Australian Broadcasting Corporation have never once investigated despite victims' pleas, okay? Now, I don't want to make an enemy of the ABC. I don't want to make an enemy of the Australian media. You know why? Because they need help. The Australian media is suffering. It's suffering hard. So is Australian journalism. And I've known some really fabulous Australian journalists, and we punch above our weight. We've got a lot to be proud of in Australia. We really do. And I can tell you this now, I really love Australia, but I really loved my mates, okay? We get very close, okay? This guy, what a funny, lovely man. He was such a lovely man. Do you know he used to smoke joints? This is back when I was shy, because I'm a medicinal cannabis patient, but I was shy when I started. Jay wasn't. He wasn't shy at all. That's because he was absolutely cool. And I mean that. I'm not just saying that because he's dead. I hope to meet him on the other side, by the way. I'm not crazy. I mean that. I really do. And I really hope I've done a good job for Jay. Jay, his mother, is on our committee. Bertha. A wonderful lady. She really is. We want justice. If there's anyone watching internationally, please, guys, can you help us? We're very sick in our group. We've got Haemophiliacs now, really, really doing it tough now with cancer. Other people with all sorts of conditions. We've got blood cancers and things like that. And I've got this advancing neurological problem, and I'm still a lot less sick than guys with cancer in the group. But what's happening is I'm now become crab man. Oh, bloody hell. You know, I need my independence. I don't have any family. It's just me, right? So I lost my family, or everyone. So I'm crab man. So I have to ingest cannabis. My prescription, which they usually get late. And when you get it, it's twice the price that you pay on the street. If you knew anyone on the street, which I don't, because I'm not cool in that way. I'm just a patient. And so as a result, I've kept myself alive. I've extended my life using medicinal cannabis. But what's happening now is that I got into this inquiry overseas. I have actually complied with their Rule 9 order. I've answered the questions that this inquiry put to me. I did that about 16 months ago. The statement's still not published. We've got people here desperate now. And I didn't expect this, but this bloody thing's really come at me now. And it's hitting me hard, okay? So what could happen is, I don't know what's going to happen. I could be a stroke risk, of course. I could also, that's a pretty big risk, okay? I've still got Hep C and I've got bone marrow failure. I have this heart condition. So, no, it's more like do, because this is a war, right? It feels like a war we're fighting. So it's not like that. What I'm saying is, for all you guys who've been supporting us, you don't know how Joel Wow is so key. It's right at the time we need it, because this is the big battle. The big battle is about to come. This evidence. We found out that Australia's taxpayer funded our ABC, an ABC that I love. I love the ABC, like a lot of Australians, really loved it. Not anymore. Sophie Scott, the ABC's medical reporter, made a decision that she would not investigate what happened to haemophiliacs in our country. How much of that has to do with her being on panels for the Kirby Institute, who have their own questions to answer about their failures, okay? And how much of that has to do with Sophie Scott being connected to Australia's public health establishment? Englishmen like Stuart Loveday, who've made fortunes coming to Australia. Their organisations have had millions and millions and millions of dollars, supposedly to represent the best interests of all people with hepatitis C, which is a deadly virus. It's a leading cause of liver cancer in Australia, okay? It wiped out Australia's haemophilia community, the one that you've never heard about. 1,400 dead, okay? Everyone around the world is at least, I think in the UK, Ireland, Canada, USA, they've all heard something about infected blood and, something about people being helped, but we've heard nothing, because this man here, right, he basically, when they needed him, he said that they were guilty of discrimination against other people with viruses. These are people who were knowingly infected, right, by a bloody company that's made billions and billions. And this man, this terrible man, does that. And Sophie Scott There she is. She tells those same people there's no need to investigate. And to our campaign, do you know what? When we go to tag her today to say, hey, come on, please, change your mind, please investigate. You're all we've got. Channel 9 aren't going to do it. We won't sell advertising. We need our public broadcaster. What do we find? We've been blocked. I thank you very much for your company this evening. I really do. We've had a very good audience. And I thank you so much because I say I'm losing my health a bit here. So I'm having accidents and, all sorts of stuff's happening. I'm actually well when I'm doing this because I've had my medicine, but I can't keep it all up. And I've done this to get us this far. Okay. I think we know now why it is the world doesn't know about Australia and that we had a contaminated blood scandal. A company called CSL made $140 billion out of Australia's blood supply. Australian volunteer donors donated blood and somehow it made billions for everybody else. Somehow we pay taxes and the ABC gets $1 billion each year and has had $1 billion, I think, for the last 30 years. And they've never once investigated the Four Corners, the famous Four Corners, never once investigated it. It's still Australia's worst treatment scandal. What happened to haemophiliacs, never once investigated. They've never once investigated how it is that CSL, a $140 billion company, had killed 1,400 people in Australia, never investigated. No, not a story. Doesn't have any merit. And Sophie Scott, she's too busy at her research. Is she a journalist or is she part of the public health establishment? I submit she is. And I submit it's Sophie Scott's conflict of interest. Oh, and Kerry Chant. Did I mention that? Dr. Kerry Chant, I almost forgot. She was there too. Has New South Wales Chief Medical Officer ever addressed contaminated blood? No, she hasn't. Why is that? Because she's covering it up. And yet, Dr. Kerry Chant is the same Chief Medical Officer that's locked us down in New South Wales. There we are. There they're all together. There's Dr. Kerry Chant. There she is, looking resplendent in her dress. Okay. There's, and there we are. There's quite a collection at that Kirby Institute function, World Hepatitis Day 2017. They'll go to a World Hepatitis Day, talk about hepatitis, but won't talk about tens of thousands of Australians who are infected through the blood supply. And she's the medical reporter, yeah? She's the medical reporter, yeah. And you're a journalist, are you, Sophie Scott? You block me, you block the campaign, you block our victims. Well, I'll tell you this now, you're going to have to get yourself a lawyer. Yeah. And so are the ABC. And I imagine I won't be invited onto the ABC again. Well, that's okay. I don't mind. I don't think very much of you. And I certainly accuse you of, being part of the cover-up here. And so does our group. By goodness we do. By goodness we do. By goodness we do. What you've done here, imagine if the BBC did what you did. And your chair, get this, the conflicts of interest just go on and on and on and on. Let me show you this. Okay. This is an advertisement from 1985. Who's that down there? Oh, it's Ida Buttrose. She's the now current chair of the ABC. And in this advertisement in 1985, she says they need extra donations because they're purifying the haemophilia treatments, right? Okay, they're doing stuff to make them safe. There, she says it there. They're purifying the haemophilia treatments. Well, guess what? They weren't purifying the haemophilia treatments. And 1,750 haemophiliacs went on to become infected with hepatitis C. And parents accepted doctors' advice to have their children injected with something that was not needed to save their lives. And it was a treatment, and those children ended up with hepatitis C. Some of them are my friends. And we have this evidence from the Infected Blood Inquiry. A Scottish haemophiliac who says he was infected by CSL, Australian blood products. That was published by the ABC's Samantha Hawley over in Europe. Okay? But no, still no investigation, right? So let's have a look at the conflicts of interest, shall we? Here we go. Okay, so we've got the ABC chair, Ida Buttrose. She promoted haemophilia treatments and blood products and the blood supply in the mid-80s, saying that it was safe and reliable, saying that the haemophilia treatments, which killed 1,400 Australians with haemophilia, including many of them children, a kid I went to school with as well, who was given this for some bruising, didn't even need the damn thing, he loses his life, and all of these things were purified. No. And all these people get Hep C. Okay, so the ABC doesn't investigate. Could it be because they don't want to embarrass their chair? Now, Gavin Morris is the head of investigations, I think, News and Investigations. He writes a letter to Sue, one of our star members of our group. Sue, you've written often, and other than hearing your concerns and passing along the background to the issue, you have a keen interest into the relevant journalists at ABC News, which I've done. I'm not sure what else I can do to assist. I don't directly commission stories or dictate to reporting teams or journalists what they should cover. I do pass on interesting story ideas and feedback from members of the public or from organisations who raise interesting topics. I did in your case. As you expect, just because someone demands the ABC cover an issue, it doesn't mean it always will. Journalists will look at the issue on merit, often do some initial research. Well, perhaps the research was her talking to Stuart Loveday and the Kirby Institute at the World Hepatitis Day that Sophie Scott was part of the panel of. Yes, so what will happen is some initial research will be done and make an independent judgment on the merits of pursuing a story. Sophie Scott, did you make an independent judgment, or did you have the Kirby Institute or Australia's public health establishment who have suppressed Australia's deadliest medical scandal? The fact that children were knowingly given, children were murdered. Okay? Children were murdered. It's criminal negligence at play here. Okay? Knowingly given. We've got the evidence. Okay? So, he says that basically, he says, having put you in touch with our medical reporter and our specialist reporting team, I trust their judgment on whether to cover an issue. Okay, so that's Gavin Morris. He trusts his medical reporter, and his medical reporter is Sophie Scott. Sophie Scott was sent evidence by Sue, evidence that during the HIV crisis, the Australian authorities, the Australian Red Cross and CSL and the government were advertising sexually explicit publications for blood donors during the HIV crisis. No other blood bank in the world did that. Sophie Scott was sent that evidence by Sue from our group, and guess what? So Sophie Scott decided there's no need to investigate. Okay? Okay. Well, guess what? We've had people who've died in our group who got no help. If they were overseas, if they were Canadian, they would have had help. I don't think that everyone would have made it. Let's be very honest. It's very bad what happened, right? But I do think, in wonderful cases, and I'll say this right now, I'd have Jay with us right now, and so would you. Okay? And he was a beautiful man. All right? A lovely, funny, gorgeous, wonderful man. And I miss him a lot. Okay? And I don't have loads of friends because it's hard to connect, or, you know, not everyone's been through hell. We've been through hell in this group. We've been through absolute hell. And we love Australia. And what you've seen these last 2 years, how you've been treated, you've experienced some of the mistreatment because of decisions made by Australia's public health establishment. Can they be trusted? Can we trust them going into the future? I say no. And I say this, the reason you never heard about Australia's deadliest medical scandal is because of this public health establishment. Okay? Men like Stuart Loveday, his organisations have made millions and millions to represent or misrepresent hepatitis C, who actually criminally discriminated against Australian haemophiliacs. Okay? Don't ever forget that. And then you have Sophie Scott, who made the decision to never investigate the haemophilia scandal. Okay? All right. And you have the Kirby Institute and holding these World Hepatitis Days to make it look that they care, and presumably taking taxpayers' money also. What a stench. What a stench. As I say, I've got this advancing motor neuron disease now, been a tainted blood victim since a kid. I think we're getting somewhere. By the way, to my detractors, this is not alcohol, it's not alcohol. For many decades, we were accused of being drug addicts and bloody alcoholics. Okay? We weren't. It was another way for them to have their cover up. Okay? This is the truth. What a mouthful tonight. I thank you very much. I really do, because the evidence I put forward tonight, by God, some crazy, crazy stuff has happened. While we've got dying people in this group, everyone else can get help but Australians. We never knew that the ABC was against us. I wasted years going to them. We tried and tried and tried. Well, now we know they're against us. Now we know we didn't have a snowball's chance in hell. And so I thank you. If you could go to our bio, if you could support our inquiry, the call for a Royal Commission of Inquiry into the Australian Red Cross CSL blood scandal, we'd be very appreciative. We've got people dying tonight, people desperate tonight. Okay, we really need your help. We've got our backs against the wall. If you like an underdog, if Australia really does still back an underdog, back our group now, because by God, we've got everyone against us. If we were overseas, we'd be helped. You know, there'd be research, there'd be counselling, there'd be all these sorts of things. But it's because we're Australian and it's because we're under this public health bloody nightmare run by these lunatics who paid millions of dollars of our money to do terrible things like turn up at bloody inquiries and say that haemophiliacs should not be helped or not get financial assistance when everybody else did, and to say that it's discrimination. What a bastard! That man killed people with that advice. Australia, we're in desperate trouble, so I'm going to fight as hard as I can. I'll give my life to this country. I'll never do anything violent. What I mean is, I'll give my life by using my experience, my voice. Something's terribly wrong. We've got corruption, and we're going to force a Royal Commission of Inquiry. It's going to happen. You better believe it. And the ABC, you better believe it. And Sophie Scott, resign, please, immediately. Bloody outrageous. You failed haemophiliacs. If you knew those people, these were such good people. They were so vulnerable. HIV, Hep C, man, they had everyone against them. All right, and they only had people like me. I wasn't enough. They didn't even have their Haemophilia Foundation backing them. They corrupted them as well. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking with me. Thank you so much. I'll say goodnight to you now. Thank you so much. And you're going to see plenty more from us coming real soon. We are banging the drum, man. We are going for this. We've had enough. Thank you.